This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 437. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and I am joined by my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmer. Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, man. I'm not going to lie. I've been a little annoyed with about 15 other things in my life today that I'm going to try not to let bleed over into this podcast. It's going to be hard to do because we're talking about the annoying, stupid Niners.
This is the perfect time to let it bleed over. Your annoyance with other things in your life, now you can take it out on the stupid 49ers. This is perfect.
That's right. Maybe that'd be the right place to put it because none of these things really matter in any way, shape, or form. They're not big deals, and maybe this is a great way to let it go. Let's see.
Well, it's a perfect way to let it go just based off of how the season ended for the San Francisco 49ers, because in many ways it couldn't have ended any worse or any better as a Seahawks fan. It looked like it had the potential for it to be a whole lot worse, but thanks to the Kansas City Chiefs, we got to drink in the 49ers tears a little bit as they finished 12-5 on the season. They finished third overall in points scored with 491 points. They only allowed 298 points, which was good for third in the NFL. They finished first overall in offense, in second in defense, 25th at special teams. But when you're that good on offense and defense and you have a team that goes all the way to the Super Bowl, you can probably afford to whiff on special teams a little bit, although maybe it would have come in handy a little bit in the Super Bowl too.
It certainly wouldn't have hurt. And so, yeah, it's Know Your Rivals, 49ers week. And you kind of mentioned their season this last year, making to the Super Bowl and losing in heartbreaking fashion in overtime. And it also reminds me that they have been to the NFC Championship game 4 out of the last 5 years. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. They have 0 rings to show for it. And I don't understand why this team isn't being talked about in terms of the Tarkenton Vikings who lost 4 Super Bowls, the Andy Reid McNabb Eagles who went to 4 straight NFC Championship games and 1 Super Bowl and had 0 rings to show for it, or the 90s Bills who went to 4 Super Bowls, which is even a better team than this Niners team because they actually made the Super Bowl 4 times rather than just twice, and with 0 rings to show for it. Yet when I listen to everybody talk about this team in the national media, it's about how great they are, pencil them in. They're the NFC champions and have a great shot at winning the chip this year. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of their losses and signings and all that stuff, plus just Super Bowl hangovers, plus the fact that they are among some of the most successful losers in terms of this stretch of football for them compared to those other teams. I think we need to change the narrative about these guys just a little bit.
I think that narrative will change, though, because I remember that time with the Bills, and it's not like as you got into the mid-90s that you really started to look at them as choke artists because they were still in it. They still had Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly and Andre Reed. As they had that core, you still thought of them as this great team. It wasn't until you got away from it that, they weren't consistently going to the playoffs anymore to when you look back on that period and you go, holy smokes, it was a great team that never lived up to those expectations of what they could have been, what they should have been. And so now they have that kind of attached to them as a part of NFL history, really, because of the fact that they did that, performed that well over that stretch of period. And I have to think that at some point down the road, Kyle Shanahan, now Andy Reid overcame it because he then moved on to the Chiefs. Then he started going to Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls once he had Patrick Mahomes. So I think that he doesn't get stuck with that stigma the same way that Marv Levy did. If you're Kyle Shanahan, you hope that you can have that more Andy Reid career arc.
Yeah, I hope he goes to another team in another conference and wins a Super Bowl by inheriting one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I'm sure it'll happen for him. Like it happens to everybody. But I do think that it's time to start talking about Shanahan, not just in his offensive quote unquote greatness, but to seriously put the choker, can't win a big game, can't get over the hump category that some of these other coaches, their legacies ended up being just that. And at this point, that narrative hasn't completely changed. Some people talk about that, but everybody talks about Shanahan, the genius, and just kind of slobber all over this roster and think that, it's just a shoo-in that they're going to win a chip one of these next 10 years doing this same thing, when I believe, Brandon, in actuality, this is their last chance with this group.
Well, let's go ahead and document some of those choke artist parts of his career, because it has been 4 times where he has had double-digit leads in big games that they've ended up choking. And it started out with that 28-3 game in the Super Bowl as offensive coordinator of the Falcons against the Patriots. Yeah, 28-3, they were up in the third quarter, and Tom Brady comes back and defeats them. Then he takes the 49ers to the Super Bowl. They're up 20-10 with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs. You remember that because I will always remember the 49ers defense getting that interception and going to pose in the end zone with the football and just acting like they had just won the Super Bowl before Mahomes came back and said, nope, you are not winning the Super Bowl.
No, we're going to run Wasp.
Following that, they were up 17-7 in the fourth quarter against the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC Championship game. Never forget that it was because Kyle choked in that NFC Championship that it allowed the Rams to win a title. Kyle would have just choked against the Bengals and our lives would have been a whole lot better with the Bengals having a Super Bowl championship that year instead of the stupid Rams. And then, of course, 2024, 20 seconds away from having a double-digit halftime lead against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Took the lead twice in the fourth quarter, once again in overtime, and could never hold on.
Nope. Another freaking choke for Shanahan. And look, they damn near choked away even getting to the Super Bowl at all this year, or this last year. You think about, they were so damn lucky to get there. Got down big to the Packers. Get down big to the Lions. Managed to somehow eke that out both times. Patrick Mahomes said, no, we're not going to let you do that crap again. And they went home and cried once again. And I think one of the things that's been overlooked in this offseason was some of the statements, and I wish I could go back and find them. I never saved them, and I wish I had. But just the heartbreak from some of those press conferences, from some of those players. When you lose again in the big game like that to Mahomes once again, man, like, those are things that teams don't emotionally bounce back from. There's certain things that players can't live down, and blame that goes all the way around. And Shanahan, in his glory, doing exactly what Shanahan does after that game, decides that, no, it wasn't really my fault. Steve Wilkes, you're out of here. You were the problem all playoffs.
They hire Nick Sorensen from within to take over, former Seahawks coach of the LOB era, former Browns player. But Nick Sorensen was here during our Super Bowl years, and now he is running the defense there for Kyle Shanahan. I feel bad for him because, Brandon Staley is also there. He's got this weird title because he's assistant coach, but then he's also defense. And it reminds me, I don't know if you've seen the Barbie movie, but where Ken, like you talk to Ken and what's Ken's job? It's beach. Oh, you're a lifeguard? Oh. No, it's beach. It's Beach Ken.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's defense Brandon.
There it is. Okay. A guy that was moving up through the ranks of NFL stardom quickly, right? With the Rams, and then his head coaching stint with the Chargers that didn't go all that great. We'll find out how long it takes for him to be Shanahan's next scapegoat when they lose another big one.
Well, it's going to be him or Sorensen. And as much as I worry a little bit about that dynamic of, because one of the things you see guys, they have success as a coordinator, then they go on to be a head coach, and then they come back to be a coordinator, something that they were really good at, which got them the head coach job in the first place. And that's just kind of where they live. With this, though, Brandon Staley doesn't coach that Pete Carroll style defense. Nick Sorensen does. So how is that dynamic then going to work out between the guy whose actual title is defensive coordinator and the guy whose title is just defense?
I honestly have no idea. And then you bring in the fact that KJ put the knife in all of our backs and became a quality control coach there as well. So another guy teaching the Pete Carroll style cover 3 defense, right? We'll see how that all comes together. But when it doesn't, I guarantee it won't be Kyle's fault. It's never Kyle's fault. And that'll be interesting. He might this time throw John Lynch under the bus, because defensively speaking, I think this has to be where some of their worries are going into this season, considering the changeover in personnel.
That defense, the number of people that they lost, especially on the defensive line, you go down the list. They lose Eric Armstead, which was 509 snaps that he accounted for on the defense last season. You got Javon Kinlaw, which nearly 500, 476. You got Clellan Ferrell, who had 471. Chase Young, I was kind of surprised that he only had 328. Randy Gregory, 272. And then they got Sebastian Joseph Day late in the season. He only played 44 snaps, but 6 guys accounting for that many snaps on the defensive line, and they're all gone.
Some big names. I think Armstead and Kinlaw are a big deal. And Clellan Ferrell is a good rotational guy. Gregory was ineffective once he got there. He was ineffective as a Bronco, at his previous stop. But I mean, this is what I've been harping on when it comes to the Seahawks for the last couple of years, right? Trenches. And this is where they're seeing the most attrition, is not just on the defensive side, but an offensive line that wasn't all that great outside of Trent Williams last year, not getting better also. So you're seeing a lot of drama on the skill position players and a lot of money being spent and all that on the outside. But this is going to, be their Achilles heel this year. The idea that they're not going to be nearly as tough up front as they have been in the past. And I understand they still have Bosa and Hargrave.
And they brought in Malik Collins from the Texans. They brought in Leonard Floyd from the Bills.
A mediocre player.
Yeah, but I feel like that's still those starting 4. I feel like they're still pretty good.
Oh, starting 4 is okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that the real problem is that there is no depth. And that's what we were seeing with the Seahawks last year, right? I mean, when it came to the interior part of the line, once you got past Jared Reed, all of a sudden it was a problem.
Yeah. And once Nwosu went down, it was a problem.
It was a problem. And Hargrave goes down, Bosa goes down. It's a problem. The
Niners never get injured, though. They never have to worry about injuries in San Fran.
Well, they didn't last year. Yeah, that's for sure, which was annoying. But you're right. They squandered a healthy year last year and came up short and choked it away. And here we are with their last chance here, because they're going to have to pay Purdy. And the thing is, they've got 2 other dudes right now that are wanting their checks. Like, one thing that was interesting about Seahawks starting training camp, no drama free. Everybody's happy. We're getting rolling. Everybody's on the same page. Simpatico, but not the Niners. Not the Niners. You have Brandon Ayuk wildly mistaking his value, and Trent Williams completely understanding exactly what his value is and trying to get more.
The drama difference is very obvious, because Julian Love, if he was looking for a new contract, it obviously wasn't obvious to Seahawks fans. It's just he showed up to work and, now he's under contract for a 3-year extension. Whereas you look at Niners, and fans were completely blindsided by the Trent Williams deal, because he was still under contract for 3 more years. He signed a 6-year contract, and here he is in the middle. Now, he doesn't have any guaranteed money, which is kind of the sign that guys would tend to look for new deals. And the thing that I enjoy most about the Trent Williams not showing up to training camp is that he doesn't mess around. We saw him not mess around in Washington and sit out half of the season before then they ultimately traded him at the trade deadline. So then he could go to the Niners. Then he got paid and got exactly what he wanted. But he is a guy who will sit out if he does not get what he feels he deserves.
I had completely forgotten that he had said nope for a full half season and didn't care. Like, it didn't bother him in the slightest. And you're right, man. That's it. That's a man you don't want to test. And look, when it comes to the 49ers offense and the straws that stir that drink, he's the second most, if not the first most important guy in that entire offense. I think they're going to have to give the man his money, but I think also that means that they're not going to bring back Ayuk for whatever ridiculous amount of money he thinks he's earned. Look, I feel like Ayuk is completely disposable for the 49ers. Like, as a Seahawks fan, when the Niners come to town, Ayuk doesn't cause me to miss a second of sleep. I don't care. I'm much more concerned about Trent Williams, McCaffrey, who is the straw that stirs that entire drink there in Niner land, Debo, Kittle, and third and Javon. Those are the guys I'm worried about. I could give two craps about Ayuk. That's a plug-and-play dude and a plug-and-play offense.
You might even put Kyle Juszczyk ahead of Brandon Ayuk, just in terms of the guys that you know are going to beat you for big plays during the game. And they paid Juwan Jennings this offseason. So that has to dig at you a little bit if you're Ayuk. And then to know that you're the guy who shows up to training camp to hold in, and then Trent Williams is the guy who actually holds out and is probably the more impactful guy. If you're Ayuk, you have to be saying, what am I even doing? Because how am I going to get paid at this point? Juwan got paid. Now Trent, I know that he's going to be the priority. Where are the dollars going to be for me ultimately? And now he's stuck because he's at training camp. He has shown up. And I guess the way that things go now, if you show up and then leave, it's a whole lot worse for you. So it might just be, actually, that may have worked out the best in terms of the Niners and their strategy for this year, because I think if they had their way, they pay Ayuk for this final year, make him play out his deal, and then get that third round comp pick when he goes and signs with another team.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. And especially because they re-upped McCaffrey this offseason. They re-upped Juszczyk this offseason. You talk about the fact that they are running out of dollars here. I don't understand how they would find the way to pay Ayuk with the way that everything is structured. I just don't think the money's there, especially with Purdy coming up.
I think there's a way, but you have to kick the can down the road a little bit. And then that hurts you in terms of all those other players that are on 1-year deals that you're not going to bring back. All of those guys on the defensive line that you hired kind of as stopgap dudes because of the huge losses that you took, you're not going to be able to bring back that next year. So it's just going to hurt you in the trenches in any future years if you're trying to hold together all of these weapons.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about the idea that they re-up Javon. Okay, cool. So you've got him. Maybe he becomes your number 2. And then they also went out and drafted that Ricky Pearsall guy. Once again, I'm not a college football expert, never will be, don't care to be. But everybody that I know that is smart about college football says that dude's damn good and could be a difference maker. So if you've re-signed Javon and you invested high draft capital in another receiver, why aren't you just trading Brandon Ayuk right now?
The time to do it would have been ahead of the draft when there were other teams who were lining up to pay him. And there was even reports that the New England Patriots were offering a high second round pick to go ahead and get Ayuk. But you listen to 49ers fans and they're like, oh, I'm glad we didn't take that deal. I'm glad we didn't take that high second round pick because Ayuk's worth so much more than that. Well,
what?
Yeah. That was the general reaction among Niners fans. And I think, okay, well, that's great that you value him that much. If you do value him that much, then you have to pay him, or you end up getting a comp pick because he just ends up leaving. Unless, I guess, they decide that they're going to go ahead and franchise tag him at the end of the year, which I guess they could technically use the franchise tag on Ayuk and then trade him.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, at this point, you're right. If they were to have traded him, it would have been better before the draft, because then you'd have assets that would have helped you this year. But then again, if you trade him now for future assets, I mean, you got to be thinking as the Niners, like, this is the last year of kind of this core as you know it. You can't hold on to these guys for more than 3, 4, 5 years in the league. Like, there hasn't been a team since the salary cap era has come around that's held on to a core group of guys for 10 years and won with that same core group of guys. Sure, the Patriots went back a couple different times, but those almost 3 completely different teams throughout that entire time there, where they kind of tore it down, built it back up, all that. This is the last hurrah for these guys, man. So maybe trade them now, get some future draft capital, and then that way you can help accelerate that rebuild that you're going to have to enter at the end of this next year when you pay Purdy a contract that is probably more dollars than his talent would or should garner.
I don't see it happening now that Ayuk is in camp, unless they get to the trade deadline and they realize, hey, we did so well at draft. Hank Pearsall's a beast. You know, Javon's balling out. Like, we can get by with this core group. And, especially if they don't have any injuries and that sort of thing. Although that's the one thing that jumps out at me about Pearsall and that signing is that it's kind of a trend in the guys that they look for as just anybody who has the football. Kittle, he's always looking to initiate contact. Debo, not shy away from taking contact. And that's one of the things watching Pearsall and some of his college highlights is that the dude is fearless going over the middle. The thing that ends up playing out, though, is that if you don't have a high amount of injury luck, having all these guys who aren't shy of contact, it tends to lead them to get hurt for stretches of time.
Yeah, and you've seen Kittle become a little more brittle as the years have gone on here. And that's no knock on him. I mean, I watched Gronkowski even begin to not be able to take the hits like he once did. I mean, there's not too many dudes that can go out there and be Antonio Gates or Tony Gonzalez and be that healthy for that long at that position. Kittle's a physical player. He keeps getting hurt. Debo has his yearly 2 to 3 game injury. It seems like Trent Williams is going to be 36. And maybe this is the thing when we talk about annoyance seeping through. This is one of the things that annoys me the most about this iteration of the Niners is they trade for Christian McCaffrey, who was always injured for almost the entire year, every time in Carolina. Then they get him, and as a Seahawks fan, you're like, yeah, he's damn good, and I'm a little pissed that you traded for him, but good luck with the health part of that. Like, there's no way. Fine. That never works out. And overall, he's been pretty damn healthy. And so for Christian McCaffrey, the human being, I hope continued good health for him and all that. And, don't wish injury on a dude in that way, in any way, shape, or form. But God damn, it's annoying that suddenly the injury-prone guy gets healthy for the Niners when he couldn't hold it together at all for the Panthers. And I think it's a lot like the Rams, where one bad Stafford injury, it's the end of their year. It's kind of the same thing with CMC.
And they do have depth behind CMC. It's not, Eli Mitchell isn't going to be a guy who can really be that guy who stirs the drink of the entire offense. I mean, we saw it at some points too, where Debo kind of had to step in and be that guy in the backfield that helped their offense run a little more efficiently. So I know what you're saying about not wishing injury on a guy. It's just that, and when a guy is so impactful on the offense as CMC was, that was the argument last year, right? Everybody was saying, oh, McCaffrey, he's got to be the MVP because he really is the most important piece, other than maybe Trent Williams, that to that offense. And you had a lot of 49ers fans were saying, hey, wait here, Brock Purdy, he's pretty good too.
Purdy's pretty good. And, definitely not a scrub or anything like that. But you think about, who he is as a quarterback. And I heard somebody on a different show, I wish I could remember who it was I was listening to so I could give them credit. But the idea that, you look at Mahomes, he gets to the Super Bowl with like Kelsey as his one, like, high tier weapon, right? And you go down the list and like a lot of these quarterbacks have one, maybe two, if you have three, wow. Purdy had four
right
going into the last year. And I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. Because he does have some limitations to his game. And like, just look at physical talent. There's nobody in the world that understands quarterback play that would look at, say, somebody like Geno Smith and compare him to Brock Purdy and say that Brock Purdy is more physically talented than Geno Smith. There's not a one.
No, I don't think it comes down to physical talent, but there are some of those things, like when we talked the other day to Clinton about some of those different stats. And one of the things that jumped out was just, how much better, even if it's just a few percentage points, but being under pressure and being able to deliver under pressure at the 55% rate, how that was 5% better than Mahomes. And in an offense where you have an offensive line that is Trent Williams and everybody else, that's pretty impressive that to be under pressure that often, being able to deliver that often. And part of that is the system. Part of that is the weapons that he has. But that offensive line, one of the things that jumped out at me, I was listening to the Bootleg Football podcast and listening to Brett, because Brock Purdy's over under for passing yard was 3,900 yards. And I heard Brett say, oh, well, that's free money. 3,900 passing yards for Brock Purdy. He's easily going to do that. And then they go and get to the point in the conversation where they're talking about the offensive line and how much pressure that all these guys are giving up, with Colton McKivitz at right tackle, with Spencer Burford, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and John Feliciano in there a little bit too. Like all those guys, I think it was 160 pressures just from those five guys who aren't Trent Williams. And that's what made me think, well, the reason why the over-under is set at 3,900 yards is because those guys might get Brock killed.
They might. And that kind of brings us back to the CMC conversation in a way, right? Like, so let's say he goes down for, I think any team should be able to, if you have good backup, withstand about 4 games, missing like your star quarterback, your star running back, something like that with a backup. Let's say they miss 7 games of CNC. Okay. Yeah. And Elijah Mitchell comes in and he's running behind that offensive line with basically just Trent Williams. And Feliciano's okay. I think Brendel gets killed a little bit unfairly, but the right side of their line's pretty bad. Burford, he gave up the big pressure in the Super Bowl to kind of end things for them in overtime and allow the Chiefs to get the ball back and score. And then, their right tackles, nobody to write home about. That's for sure.
59 pressures last season, 9 sacks for McKivitz. I think I estimated 160 just writing down this list and not doing the math quickly. 187 pressures from those 5 guys that I mentioned.
Yeah.
I was trying to be nice.
Wow.
Trent gave up 20 and 0 sacks. 20 pressures, 0 sacks.
There you go. So you have that offensive line. You don't have CMC running at full tilt, which puts everything then onto Brock Purdy's plate. Like if that happens behind that bad offensive line, even though Purdy is good under pressure, like we can't deny that. Well, he's been damn lucky under pressure. Like, let's put it that way. How many times have we watched these football games with Purdy and he throws at least 3 Purdy turdies into the teeth of the defense and walks away unscathed? Like it happens all the freaking time. Yeah. That's got to run out at some point. It's got to run out at some point. And especially with no CMC behind a depleted offensive line, it could turn into a really rough year for them. And especially if up front defensively, they're not the same and they can't stop people running the rock down their throat.
The other thing that stood out to me just about the Niners as a whole, this team is old. They have a lot of old players. You go down, like Seattle, they measured the teams in terms of the number of guys who are at 33 years old or more. And the Commanders and Steelers and Saints have 11 guys. The Browns and Texans have 12. And then I had the number here, but now it's gone away. I think it was like 16 guys. They had like 16 guys who were, wow. They were far and away more than the next closest team. And on top of that, they've played 60 games over the past 3 seasons, if you don't include the preseason.
That piles up, man. It really does. And I don't know. I have a feeling. Okay, here's my ridiculous hater homer take from a Seattle perspective.
Uh-huh.
I think this division is won either by the Rams or the Seahawks this year. I think the Niners end up being a wild card this year.
You think that they do they end up getting to the wild card, though?
Yeah, they're not a bad team. For as much as I've sat here and tried to crap all over them for the entire first half of this podcast, I do have to admit the talent they have overall is a good roster. And Shanahan has proven that he gets to the playoffs and, deep into the playoffs. He just can't win the big one. So I have to admit that they probably have a darn good chance of getting back to the playoffs at least. But it always feels like there's that 1 to 2 teams that are just kind of penciled in as, oh, they'll be great again. And then halfway through the season, I'll go, man, what happened to X team?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Niners are maybe the highest on the list to me, a little like the Eagles were last year, of like, what the hell happened to that team?
18 players who are 30 or older when no other team has more than 12. See, I was trying to give them credit there too by saying 16.
Yeah. Do they get like special senior lunches in training camp and things like that?
They all get the special parking up close to the building, and so they don't have to walk as far.
Gotcha.
But they have that going for them.
That's good. Well, I really hope none of them break their hip this year.
No, you can't wish for that on anybody. But It feels like it's time.
Yeah, man. You can only hold these things together for so long. I mean, we watched, a similar thing happen with the LOB era Seahawks. You can continue to kind of cobble it together, but to get to the same heights is difficult to do. The only difference being is that the Seahawks did get over the hump. They were able to win the big game and win a Super Bowl this century, unlike the stupid Niners.
So when you look at the Niners opponents coming up this season, how do you think they are able to get to that? Because they actually, looking at their schedule, they have a pretty easy start to the season, I think. They start the season, they get to play at home against the Jets, which Rodgers could be back and healthy, but still, that would be his first game in a long time to start off the year. Then they go on the road against the Vikings. I feel like whatever the quarterback situation with the Vikings is, that might not be worked out yet. The Rams game might be their toughest game in that stretch of the first 4 games, and then they go on the road. Or no, then they're back at home in Levi Stadium against the Patriots, which should be an easy win for them.
Yeah, I think the first, 5-6 games here are highly winnable and, relatively easy. Let's see what we got. We got Jets, Vikings, Rams, Pats, Cards. So Jets, Vikings, Rams, Pats, Cards. Okay, and then Seahawks. Yeah. The first 5 weeks, they're probably 4-1 through there.
4-1 seems right.
Then the world gets a little more difficult for them. Seahawks, Chiefs, Cowboys, Bucks, Seahawks, Packers, Bills, and then the overhyped Bears. Maybe that'll be their next win.
I like how we went from just doing 4 games at a time in the past to now we've cycled through, I think, the next 8 games.
Yeah. Sorry. I just kind of looking at it in stretches, right? Of okay, those first 5 games, pretty easy. But that's it. It doesn't break down into 4 4 quarters anymore because of the extra stupid game.
But we just have to, we have to work. Let's go to the next 5 because we started with 5. We go to the next 5 and it's sandwiched by 2 appearances against the Seahawks. And then in between they have a bye week. They got the Chiefs, Cowboys, and Bucks. How do they do over that stretch after going 4-1?
Poorly. I think that Patrick Mahomes is their daddy. I think that Mike McDonald's defense is definitely here to help confuse the McShanahans. And so I think that's going to make it tough. I think they split with the Seahawks. Cowboys, great regular season team.
They could lose to the Cowboys.
We'll see what happens with with their turmoil and unsigned players, right? Bucks, another playoff team, right? And they didn't really lose anybody of note. I think that team definitely has a ceiling, but another potential playoff year for them. I could see them winning the NFC South again. That's a terrible ass division, but
we should at least give them 2 and 3 over this stretch, right?
Yeah.
So if they go 2 and 3, add that to their 4-1, they're 6-4.
6
after
and
the
4,
first
they
10
lose.
Games.
Yeah. So then do you want to do the next 5 then?
Sure. Or maybe even go the next. Let's see. How many do we got here? I guess we got 7 left because that's how the schedule works. Okay. Let's do the next 4 before we close it out. At Green Bay.
Loss.
They got at Bills.
Loss.
They play the Bears. They should be able to beat the Bears.
Win.
And the Rams at home.
Loss.
Ooh. 1 and 3?
Yeah.
Just because it's hard for them to even make the wild card at this point.
Yeah.
I think 2 and 2. I think 2 and 2 is more fair.
Okay. You're probably more right there. I just wanted to be a real jerk to the faithful.
So 2 and 2, that brings them to 8 and 6. And then they have at Miami, they got the Lions, and at the Cardinals. See, they could get 10. There's 10 wins there.
Yeah, I think they're probably a 9-10 win team. That feels right in my gut.
And heart. Mostly the heart, because we're very much doing this with our hearts.
Well, I mean, there's more nerve endings in your gut than in your brain, so always listen to that. That may or may not be true.
So where does the sports hate lie? Is it in the heart or is it in the gut? Like where does the sports hate come from?
Every fiber and cell of my being. That's where that sports hate comes from for this stupid fucking franchise.
Just trying to find the origin place where it really lives. I mean,
it's like the force. It's everywhere. In every being, every fiber of my being.
Okay, that's fair. It's all around us, and we must harness it and
all penetrating. Yes,
and use it for our own physical purposes.
Right.
It's too bad we can't harness it a little bit more to where they don't make the Super Bowl, but it feels like it strengthens everything by having that happen.
If you were to put a percentage chance on the Niners making the Super Bowl from your heart, your gut, your brain, wherever you want it to come from, Brandon, whatever origin, what percentage would you put on it?
They're the odds-on favorite, though, to make it back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I know, because people are stupid.
Well, that's part of it. And some of it's not just being stupid, but some of it's also relying on history and because they've been the team that can show us. And so it's tougher to think of other teams like the Lions or Seahawks or Packers taking that step forward to elevating themselves above what we've seen consistently from the 49ers over the last few seasons. So, yeah, I think it's not necessarily just stupidity.
Well, I mean, to me, if you're thinking about it being like the overwhelming favorite, I mean, the reason why the odds are that way is because there's so many people in the betting public that would bet on that's how they get, even action on the money, right? By placing the odds in that way. But I think if you were to give anybody that pays attention to the league truth serum and has looked at the history of the league in terms of these types of non-dynasties that wanted to be dynasties, like how long they last, they're at the tail end of it. In my gut, my heart, every fiber of my being, I think that they have maybe like a 15% chance to make it back to the Super Bowl.
So do you worry then more about a team like the Rams or the Cardinals being on their way up if you think that the Niners are on their way down in that steep of a direction?
I worry about the Rams only as long as, Stafford's elbow and back is okay. And, another guy that's been annoyingly healthy for the most part for the Rams, like, even though he was never healthy for the Lions, it was just frustrating. I mean, he always played, but he was always injured.
Yeah.
I'd worry about them a lot more than the Cards at this point. I know, you brought up Brett and EJ earlier, and I think their title to the Cards video was the NFL's most improved team. And I mean, I guess if you're going from, rolling dumpster fire to just a rolling dumpster going down the hill that's out of control, like, yeah, that's a big improvement, I suppose. But they're a long ways away from being a real contender in my mind. I don't know. Are those two teams that you look at and they're like, yeah, I fear the ascension of the Rams and or the Cards?
No, it's more the Rams. I just wanted to throw the Cardinals in there to be fair. But I know what you mean about the Cardinals and being most improved. I think I commented something to the fact that, oh, look, we're the Cardinals. We made garbage edible.
Nice. Solid comment by you.
Now it's improved. Yeah.
That's right. New and improved garbage makes you gag 30% less.
You can kind of eat it.
Kind of. Yeah. The, one game, maybe two losses to the Rams. And then, I don't think that they're sweeping the Seahawks again this year. I really don't. Unless offensively, the Seahawks are just a disaster. But I don't know that that's going to be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case. Just defensively speaking, I think that the Seahawks are going to be much better than they were in the last 2 years. And that's going to make it tough on the Niners. I don't think they can pencil in those 4 gimmies a year of 2 against the Hawks, 2 against the Cards.
Yeah, and even the Cards are going to give them a run, whereas I feel like they've been able to kind of run all over them. I still think they beat the Cardinals twice, but it's a tougher victory now.
Mm-hmm. And if they, have one of their historically, bad injury years that they seem to kind of ping pong between throughout this entire era of this 49ers franchise, yeah, they could easily drop one to the Cards at that point.
All right. So in summary, screw the Niners. You're going to stink this year. Well, you're not going to stink like out loud, but you're on the way down. So hope you enjoyed the time you had on top, Niners fans.
I hope you enjoyed the time that you had almost at the top, 49ers, but continually choked away the opportunity to actually be king of the mountain and still not have a Super Bowl win this freaking century.
Well, that part of it, I just meant on top of the division.
Oh yeah, no, don't give them credit for that right now. You got to find the place to attack them, and that's at the top, the tippy top
with the Super Bowl choking.
Yeah.
I don't think I can take any more of that. So I'm glad that part of it's over.
I can take them choking, but just the problem is for them is that those chokes are going to start coming earlier and earlier in the year. Like all of a sudden you can't get past the divisional round and now you're just a wild card team. And oh my gosh, we missed the playoffs by half a game. Like it's coming.
Let's get to the second half of the show.
All right.
Welcome back. We are now into the second half of the show, Adam, and training camp. It's here. It kind of snuck up on us, but we've been following training camp. We've done a couple shows on our Believe podcast channel. If you haven't subscribed over there, just look for the Hawkra, or you can go to getintheflock.com. The posts there, if you're not a member, it will provide you the link to where you can go to subscribe to all of the shows on the Believe Network, or if you are a member at getintheflock.com, they'll be right there for you, ad free.
Heck yeah, man. fun to be a part of that. And if you're looking for the video form, all the shows are on the Seahawks podcast YouTube channel. So we're not split up in that way. So that makes it easy as well. So either way, you have no excuses. You should be able to find all the amazing content that we're putting out for you guys.
And like I said, talking training camp, which one of the things that's bothered me about to this point in training camp, it's not necessarily what we've seen from Mike, and because that's been good. Seeing the players interviewed has been good. There was this talk about bringing in Connor Williams to help out the offensive line, and he passes a physical, and then there's been nothing. We haven't heard anything about Connor Williams potentially signing with the Seahawks.
Crickets. So either one of two things has happened. They offered him a contract. He decided he wanted to think about it or wasn't all that interested and is going to talk to the teams that, quote, other teams with interest. Or John Schneider has kidnapped Connor Williams and is hiding him in a cave on the side of Mount Rainier somewhere until he breaks his will and makes sure that he signs with the Seahawks. I don't know which.
I kind of hope it's the latter. Not for like, I hope Connor's okay and that his family knows that he's going to be okay, but he needs to know that he has to put his name on the paper before he can leave this cave.
Right. So what needs to happen is in the cave, even though Connor's family will be kept okay and with zero problems, Connor needs to be made to thought that if he doesn't sign on the line, then his family will not be okay. And that sort of extortion is what John Schneider needs to be applying right now.
We've reached the more ruthless part of John Schneider's time. Like Pete Carroll was there to maybe hold him back a little bit and say, you know, this probably being a voice of his conscience. Mike McDonald does not have any sway. In fact, I think he may be more the one that pushes John Schneider to be more ruthless. Yeah.
John Schneider gone wild. Look out.
I'd kind of hope that maybe it's just not a dude on the offensive line. Like maybe we can also use this in other ways, but it's a good start.
It's a good start. Let's hope we hear more news on that. I guess not hearing that Connor Williams is signed with another team or is having a visit or something should also be positive. Maybe they're on a backpacking trip together, just, talking about the amazingness that is the Pacific Northwest and, just kind of showing him around. Maybe that's what's going on.
We have heard a lot from Coach Mike just about his being out on hikes. Like he's a dude that likes to walk around.
Yeah, well, if you've been stuck in freaking Baltimore for the last however long, coming out to the West where there's mountains and cool stuff, I bet you that's like being a kid in the candy store.
Coach McDonald, definitely a hiker. And what else has impressed him from your takeaways in his press conferences?
I think there hasn't been much that has, quote unquote, impressed him. Like what I've gotten from the interviews is like, okay, we're on track. I'm fine with that. I know that all of us, whether it's the players, the fan base, the front office, we're chasing something. I know that. And just the way that he uses that word so often in his language and talking about everything and just kind of his overall demeanor makes me think that he is not at all satisfied as to where they are at this point. Not that that's a bad thing. I think he thinks they're on track, but they're nowhere near where he wants to be.
Some of the notes that I've seen at a training camp is that Geno Smith, far and away ahead of the other quarterbacks on the roster, maybe a little bit of disappointment from Sam Howell, maybe.
I heard PJ Walker may be even pushing him just slightly for the backup position. So tough blow to the future quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, the future of the franchise.
The future can wait. It's fine.
Sure. Yeah, it can wait because they're going to need to find a different dude if they're looking for the future.
We'll see. One other thing that I learned from training camp, Jaron Reed, not a fan of the caps. The padded caps that go over, the Guardian caps. He was asked if he hoped that anybody would wear them during the game, or if he thought that anyone would wear them during the game, and he said he hoped not.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys are going to have a hard time wearing the helmet diaper. I think that if I was thinking about it in terms of guys in the league this next year coming in that I think should probably wear it from like game one on And I think the head of that list is Tua. Like,
right.
If I just gave him all that money for some unknown reason, I would want it to bubble wrap his head as much as possible.
He would be the immediate candidate. But one of the things that Reed said is he didn't think that it really made a difference, because my thought was that the guys on the offensive and defensive lines, those would be the prime candidates for wearing these snap in and snap out, because they're the guys who are banging their heads around together every single play.
I mean, even though they're huge dudes, and I know that they work with a lot of force and all that, and you always hear the old cliche, it's like a car crash in the trenches on every play. I mean, I don't know if that's entirely true, but the distance that is traveled, from being from a dead stop to collision is so short that I can't imagine that those collisions are nearly as brutal as, edge rusher, getting the edge, taking the corner, and slamming a quarterback from the blind side down. Like, I think that's a lot more violent. I think some of the receivers and backs and things like that, I think those hits seem a lot more violent just because of the speed that is in momentum that is built up over the course of the play.
Yeah, and that wasn't my concern necessarily, because I think when I hear Reed say that it doesn't make a difference, I think of those more violent plays and think that, well, having another little bit of padding isn't going to help you all that much when you're getting hammered over the middle by a guy. I'm thinking that little bit of padding, it at least helps for those shorter collisions that are more frequent. And so that's why it was a little surprising to hear him say that it didn't really make that much of a difference, because, yeah, I know you have the padding on the inside of your helmet, but it's another layer. And it sounds like if they do wear them during the games, they're going to have another part that, like a shell that kind of goes over it, or at least a smooth part that goes over the top that's going to have the logo, so it kind of still looks like a helmet. At least that's the impression that I get, that it's not going to be a logo-less Guardian cap that you see on the practice field.
Yeah, that makes sense with as anal retentive as the NFL is about helmet painting rules. That doesn't surprise me. But you make an interesting point. Maybe that would be more effective against the cumulative effect of lower impact stuff like dudes on the offensive or defensive line experience. But either way, I think we learned something fundamental from Jared Reed's position, and that is players don't want to look stupid running around out on the field. Looking cool still matters. And I don't know that it's going to be an easy sell to get grown men to wear the helmet diaper out on the field.
Looking cool is always going to matter for dudes in their 20s. Like, that's, yes. I think that's just life.
I fell as victim as I could to that, and, tried to look as cool as I possibly could, which is on the very low end of cool. But we all at that age as young men struggle with such things.
Well, speaking of people who are victims, we learned here recently that Byron Murphy was, quote unquote, a victim of an extortion attempt, according to his agent, that he was accused by an OnlyFans model of owing them. It doesn't say if it's he or she, but owing an OnlyFans model $15,000.
Okay. Well, just on percentages, I'm going to guess it was a lady on OnlyFans, because if I'm thinking of the percentage of gender of OnlyFans models, I think
you've been on OnlyFans a lot, and you're saying that OnlyFans skews female.
I think you only have to go to OnlyFans once to understand the ratio there. That's for sure. Or at least my guess. I don't know. I haven't really explored it deeply.
You've heard from friends who have.
So I've heard. Yeah, that's what my friend told me anyway. But how can you be a victim of an attempted extortion thing, Brandon? Like, doesn't it have to be successfully extorted for you to then become a victim?
Then be a victim? Yeah, I feel like the agent has done Byron a disservice here by referring to him as a victim, when in fact that he's only been the victim of a message being sent to his. Well, I guess we find out that Byron Murphy has an OnlyFans account.
Yeah. So we got that much too. Yeah, I suppose. And yeah, especially as a young man with money to burn. Okay. Yeah, sure. Maybe that's where you spend it. But this is where I think you got to take a lesson from the Trumpster and like be able to frame things in certain ways. Like instead of his lawyer coming out and being like he was a victim of an attempted extortion attempt, being like Byron Murphy thwarted an attempted extortion and won the day. Like you got to make yourself look powerful and strong. Yeah.
Byron Murphy is the hero of the story. Like he was, right. He could have been a victim, but ultimately turned it around and he's the hero.
No, the likely female OnlyFans model was the victim because Byron Murphy thwarted them.
I am kind of curious now how much of his signing bonus has gone toward helping young women in their entrepreneurial opportunities.
Hey, man, all those ladies that are able to take free money by posting pictures of themselves on the OnlyFans, if I were a hot chick, if I had been born a hot chick, I'd be the worst offender of this in the world. I'd keep getting them checks all freaking day. Proud of those ladies. You do you, man.
How do we get on OnlyFans? And could we make money?
I think what you need to do is find a way to be able to jump into alternate dimensions where somehow dad bod, middle-aged, 40, pasty white dudes are desirable to give money to for a picture of them smiling or something. Like we'd have to find a way.
Maybe Byron doesn't have an account because he was helping out others. Maybe he was doing research to find out what he can do for a career beyond football.
Oh, maybe. Or maybe he was recruiting OnlyFans models to hit up key players on the Niners and the Rams over and over again to distract them, to bait them into at least one inexplicable loss.
Yes. I think you're onto something here. We need to flock source this.
Absolutely. So
we have members of the flock who can infiltrate other opponents' teams via OnlyFans throughout the season as a distraction.
Yes. So not only did hero Byron Murphy thwart the attempted extortion claim, but he went to that said model and recruited others to then run interference against players on the Rams and the Niners. Don't try to check that with anybody else's reporting or anything like that. It's just a true fact and accept it.
Also a true fact, we have some exceptional members of the flock who went to getintheflock.com. They are helping to support the show. We've got our executive producers, DCH and Has No Clue, and Adam. We've got a couple new members of the flock here. Well, not new members, people who have changed the amount of support that they are providing to the show. We've got Mike McLean, who is now donating $12 over the $1 donation. So thank you to Mike McLean.
Heck yeah, Mike. Appreciate that a ton. I don't know specifically what we did to deserve a raise, but we will endeavor to do more.
Well, I will say that through the offseason, there are people that dial back their support while it's the offseason because they don't follow football as much through the offseason. But training camp has arrived. It's here. Now it's football season. And some people feel that, okay, now I'm jumping back into football. I'm also dialing back up my support for the show. And so sometimes we tend to see these waves. We've got Mark Misselbrook, who has also upgraded from the $4 level to the $12.12 level. So thanks to Mark Misselbrook, who has been with the show for, at least 10 years.
Oh, yeah. No, the second you mentioned it was Mark who had given us the raise, I was like, holy crap, how long has it been that Mark's been an amazing little flocker in better part of a decade? I feel like he deserves like a little crown or something, you know?
Yeah, we should have something that we can offer like 10-year plus members of the flock because, for some of these folks, it has been that long.
That's a longer relationship than I've ever had with, any of the ladies in my life. So, one of them got a ring at one point. So these guys should at least get that.
Right. Yeah, a ring. That would probably be more economical than doing like a lime green jacket.
Yeah.
If we all had rings, then we know we were part of a club together.
Right? Yeah. Be like Skull and Bones or something.
Catfish!
Yeah. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I always want to be part of an elite club.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already talking about infiltrating other organizations from our own.
Right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always thought that that'd be fun, too, to be part of one of those secret societies and all that stuff. But then I saw the movie Eyes Wide Shut, and then I thought, maybe not for me.
There's parts that seem okay.
Like the masks?
It's fun to dress up.
I guess so. All right. Yeah.
All right. And if you want to become a member of the flock, you can go to getintheflock.com. Gets into our Discord where we've been talking football. If you get at the $12 level, it gets you into our Facebook Ring of Honor group. And of course, just at any level, helping to support the show, you can listen to all our episodes ad-free through the Patreon app. And yeah, we've got our Pick'em League coming up. That's going to be fun. I see that CBS has unlocked it. We're all set for a new season of the Pick'em League there at CBS Sports. Until we find a better option, we're just going to go ahead and stick with that. If you go to the Pick'em League link from SeahawkersPodcast.com, you can sign up there and be a part of our Pick'em League.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it this year, Brandon, because I think this year with more or less not traveling anymore, maybe the rare job to fill in on if I'm lucky, that means then I will have more time to think about Pick'em, which means I won't forget about Pick'em, which means I'm going to do Pick'em all the way through the year. That's my goal this year, is to not like podium or anything, but just to finish.
You just want to cross the finish line.
Yeah.
It's a good goal.
Yeah.
I mean, since it has been probably 10 years since last time you crossed the finish line.
It's true. It's true. I deserve an anti-ring for that.
Well, I'm going to kick things off with Do Better, and my Do Better is for the NFL Network, Adam. This offseason has been a weird one for the Around the NFL podcast because it was going along in the offseason, and all of a sudden the show, it stopped producing episodes. And for a show that's been around like the entire time since you and I have been doing podcasts, the Around the NFL podcast has been there forever. It goes back to, I think, when they were on Dave Damashek and his program. And then they go on, they're doing Around the League. They get picked up as the Around the NFL, and it just went away. And there has been no show that was, there was no goodbye show. And I think that that's the big problem that I have, is that here's a show that's been around forever, beloved by football fans, and the NFL just does away with it. They don't give them an option of saying, hey, everybody, this is our final show. It's been a great run. Now Greg's going to take it over. There needs to be some kind of conclusion. And we were cheated of that by the NFL Network. And for that, NFL Network, do better.
Yeah, man, that was a weird one. I noticed in May there was no more shows coming out. And since then, I had heard the news that the show was disbanded. So I had gotten rid of it out of my feed and everything. So the show technically is still around, like with Rosenthal hosting now. Is that what's going on? I thought maybe he started a different show.
No, I didn't get rid of the app. And so shortly after seeing that news, I think I got the news through Pro Football Talk that the show was done and two of the hosts were no longer with it, and Greg was going to continue it. And I think the new shows then started popping up in the old feed.
Okay.
So it's like an NFL-owned feed, I'm sure.
Yeah. Either way, I don't know exactly what came down the pike that made them decide that this was no longer a viable thing. I am stunned by that because of the relatively low production cost of a show like Around the NFL in comparison to all the other studio shows and stuff, when they're cutting ties with talent left and right and seemingly dissolving NFL Network. I thought this was a slam dunk, low cost, high reward kind of show for them. And then your point about the lack of finality or, final episode and finality is 100% on point. It's a little like when the show Deadwood, just suddenly ended because HBO decided to go into a different direction with Rome, which failed miserably, and didn't give you any closure with that show. It really sucked. In a weird year overall in sports media, losing around the NFL, which is a mainstay. One of the few shows, I don't listen to a lot of outside stuff. I try not to, just so that I have my own opinion for this show. But that was one I definitely did. And so losing that, a bummer. Watching the NBA on TNT, like that's a, American institution. Looks like that's going to be gone this year. Just a weird time in sports media. And yeah, NFL, don't just pull the rug out from under us, like without saying a word. Do better.
Yeah, I haven't even listened to because I was kind of upset about it. I haven't even listened to Greg's show to see if he covers it now and talks about what happened. If that's the way that they're going to shut it down, they probably don't want him talking about it.
I would imagine. And nothing against Greg in any way, shape, or form. Like, I don't have any hard feelings towards him. This is about the suits, right? And just crappy. That's a crappy way to do your fan base. And not a fan of the way that it was handled.
What you got for do better?
All right, might do better this week, Brandon. Just to stay on point and keep with the theme of this episode, is for Brock Purdy. Headline of this article by CBS Sports. 49ers Brock Purdy aiming for, quote, Tom Brady kind of dominance. I feel like I can get to that in San Francisco. That's the title of the article. Slow down, big shoots. Slow down. You have to first not hurt yourself in the NFC Championship game and get beaten there. You also have to not choke in overtime against the Chiefs and lose your first Super Bowl, because Tom Brady, I don't know if you recall, he won his first Super Bowl as a massive underdog to the Rams. And then, win, I don't know, 6 more chips from there. So maybe win one first before you start talking about aiming for Tom Brady kind of dominance. And here is this quote from the article. He says, quote, I want to be dominant, not just win games and feel like, I want to be dominant with consistent decisions and feel like we're the top dogs every day. There were moments last year in games where I would I don't know what it was in the situation, but we'd be up and it's all right, be smart with the ball, or let's just make sure we don't mess up. I want to break through that and get to this point of just being dominant for 4 quarters, man. That's my mindset. My man, you need to realize who you are and stay in your lane. You are not Captain Dominant. You will never be Tom Brady. Look, there's maybe only one dude on the planet who thinks that maybe he could be the next Tom Brady, and that's Sir Patrick Mahomes. Maybe win at least one before you decide that you're going to be as dominant as Tom Brady. And not only that, but you're a game manager, dude. You're like that first year of Tom Brady. You're never going to be end of the career Tom Brady, where everything flows through you. So to Brock Purdy for self-anointing himself as somebody who could be the next Tom Brady, do better.
So is that all it took for Tom Brady? At one point in his career, did he stop saying that he's going to be smart with the football at the end of games and just decide that he's going to be dominant, and that's what led him toward greatness? Was that a limitation switch in Tom Brady's brain? That seems to me, if you're Brock Purdy, not the smartest way to go about being dominant, to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to focus on being dominant and not smart with the football late in games.
That's a good point. Maybe he shouldn't have been do better. Maybe this should have been better at life. The fact that he is switching his mentality to a place that he shouldn't. There's a weird thing with quarterbacks in Seattle. We had a front row seat to this sort of thing. When you get a guy who's really good, more than a game manager, but he's not Tom Brady or Joe Montana, right? Just really good and plays a certain style of ball. They have a certain amount of success, and then all of a sudden, well, I want to be more than that. What if you're not? What if you're not more than that? Most dudes aren't more than that.
Yeah.
We saw that happen to Russell Wilson, right? The disease of more, after he had so much success with Pete Carroll and then playing a style of football that accentuated his positive attributes. And quite frankly, early on in his career, Hall of Fame attributes. That's okay. Same thing applies here to Brock Purdy, dude. You are who you are. Don't try to be more than you are. Or maybe do. Like, maybe that's better for our deal. Knock yourself out, bud.
Yeah, it's weird you don't hear guys like Mahomes saying, you just don't hear him talking about greatness in that way. He's never had to come out and say, I want to be the guy. He just goes out and he's the guy.
Yeah, and then just be's the guy, right? Whereas, Russ, he started talking about it, and then you saw how things went, right? And
yeah,
I think that's kind of where Purdy is. Like, realize the good fortune that you've had to get in the situation that you're in, and hats off to you, man. Like, no worries there. And I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but understand you're much closer to being Nick Foles than, and having success that way than you are to being Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson.
Well, he still has to go out and be Nick Foles. Nick Foles got a ring. He led his team to a Super Bowl win behind center, where that's something that Purdy hasn't even done yet. So, I mean, Purdy's still on the same level as Dak Prescott.
Yeah. In fact, the legacy about being dominant that he should be thinking about is how much he has dominated not getting it done on the biggest stage, right? And he's probably going to have his legacy come in a lot closer to Donovan McNabb than it's going to be to Tom Brady.
What we've seen over the last 20 years, there's so few guys that even win two. I mean, you can count all the guys in the last 25 years that have won two that aren't Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. It's Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and who else? Is that it? Are those the other two?
I think that's it.
Oh, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning won two.
God, I have such a hard time giving him credit for the second one with the Broncos, because it wasn't that Peyton Manning went out and won that Super Bowl. Like, yeah.
But he was the quarterback of the winning Super Bowl team.
It's true. It's true. You can't take it away from him.
My point is, not a lot of guys even get to two.
Look, I mean, Purdy's been to one and has a 0% winning percentage. So we'll see how that goes going forward.
My Better at Life this week is for Amy Franz, who I found out about out on Twitter or X and at Ichi Meter Lady, because I just thought it was a cool show of sportsmanship. When Yordan Alvarez and the Astros came to town, he hit a home run on his way to hitting for the entire cycle. And it was Amy who posted out on Twitter, said, "Dear Astros Mariners, I have Yordan Alvarez's home run ball. It's worth more to him than me being as he hit for the cycle. Please find a way for me to get it to him." That tweet helped get her in touch with the Astros, and she ended up getting a picture and getting some signed memorabilia from Yordan. And there's not a lot of people, I think, in the crowd who show that kind of sportsmanship, because, on one hand, the sports hate for the Astros, I think as a Mariners fan, you might say, well, screw that guy. I'm just going to keep this and maybe I'll find a way to make some money off of it. I feel like that's the normal fan thing to do, but not for Amy. She did the kind and good thing as a sports fan and tracked him down, got him the ball, and a cool memento for the young member of the Astros. So to Amy, you are better at life than Skip Bayless.
Heck yeah, man. That's a super cool move. And I really do appreciate the sentiment that she expresses there. Like, I'd like to think that, let's say, I don't know, had been at a game and Aaron Donald had set the sack record or something and then accidentally kicked the ball into the stands out of excitement and I caught it, that I would, just give it back to the guy. Right. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to do that, right? With the sports hate and a little bit of greed mixed in. So this Amy gal, clearly higher in character and personality than maybe even myself. So good choice by you.
I know what the right thing to do is, but yeah, knowing how I would act in that moment, not so sure.
No, that's interesting. Well, good for Amy and good choice by you. You should have done yours last, because I think yours is better than mine. I was having a hard time figuring out a better at life this week, Brandon, because I was just so annoyed when we started this podcast. I was just in that kind of mood. But my better at life than Skip Bayless this week is for the journal Nature Communications, and the scientists that actually added to this article here. I think, let's see, who was it? It was one of the co-authors was Yanhao Lin from the Center of High Pressure Science and Technology in Beijing. And basically what they have discovered and found out is that the planet Mercury, Brandon, because of the planet's chemistry and the high pressures of its super dense atmosphere and being right next to the sun and everything, all that, its surface is 11 miles of diamonds. It's covered in 11 miles of a diamond crust. And they just figured this out recently. And I think that's super cool because, number one, it could potentially kill the De Beers monopoly on diamonds and, make everybody really realize just how truly worthless diamonds are in comparison to other gemstones. And two, if nobody does figure that out and they do figure out how to send a probe there and scoop up a couple of handfuls of diamond and fly back on the regular, that's going to bring the cost of diamonds down for all of us here and help all of us dudes who have to propose to ladies at some point, afford that ring and give them the rock that they really deserve. It would be super special if it came from a Mercury diamond as well, which would be super cool. So to the scientists that have discovered this and potentially going to help all of us in the future propose for cheaper, you guys are better at life than Skip Bayless.
I think now you've put that out there. There's going to be women who have the expectation that a Mercury diamond would be way cooler than any on-Earth diamond.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now there's a little bit of pressure on the dudes to figure out how to get to Mercury to make this happen.
But if you're a smart dude, you go, look, baby. Obviously, diamonds are a dime a dozen, right? Duh. These aren't, they're pretty common on Earth. They make saws with diamond tips, how special are these things? How about I buy and then throw in your gem of choice, right? Something that's actually rare, like
how many other
ruby.
Places around have sapphires other than Phillipsburg? There's not that many, is there?
7
places.
But
you can count
I don't
them,
know that for a fact.
You can count them on one hand if you have 2 extra fingers.
That's exactly right. Yeah, if you're I guess you're the 6-fingered man from Princess Bride, not the 7-fingered.
You still need
that joke almost worked. Yeah, damn it.
They're not always going to land.
Nope, can't all be winners.
Just like the 49ers.
That's exactly right. All their seasons can't be winners. This is going to be a loser season for them because they're a bunch of losers and they're faithful for no reason. I can't stand that stupid team. And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Stupid.